So what's this empty nonsense about Ronald Reagan being just an actor? I've watched Ronald work his entire adult life preparing for public service. His will be a new, informed, vigorously dedicated leadership. So on November the 8th, vote for Ronald Reagan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rush Limbaugh.
Glad you're all with us. Thank you. Thank you. Now they're trying to bust the applause record here of 2 minutes. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks so much. As you might have guessed, it is our tribute to Ronald Reagan, who turned 85 on February 6th. And we thought, what better way to start out than with that endorsement from John Wayne from 1966. A commercial that no doubt still would anger liberals today who watch it. Our purpose here today, ladies and gentlemen, is to pay a tribute to Ronald Reagan, who has been maligned and impugned, criticized, assaulted, and attacked by liberals. It goes on to this day, the effort to write a revisionist history about the 1980s, the record of his presidency. I'm 45 years old. My historical perspective, starting from the date of my birth, is pretty small compared to the history of the nation. But from what I have experienced and from what I've learned in history, I have to rank Ronald Reagan as one of the greatest presidents of all time, and certainly of my lifetime. He was so effective, so effusively optimistic, that he to this day spawns criticism that I believe is born of a personal dislike and in some cases hatred. The reason for this is quite simply the fact that what Ronald Reagan wanted to do and succeeded for the most part in doing worked tremendously. He demonstrated that it is the American people working together as individuals that makes this country great. Ronald Reagan demonstrated that all you have to do is unshackle the American people, let them exercise the freedom that is the natural yearning, God-given, of the human being, and that nobody can stop them. And as long as there are oppressed peoples around the world, America will remain a beacon of hope to those who seek freedom. Now, if you have a lot of freedom, and if you remove shackles that are placed there by a government which seeks to make individuals dependent, you're going to be an enemy. You're going to be a target for those who attempt to take over the running of other people's lives. That's how they derive their power. The liberals, that's how they derive their sense of self-esteem. They create a situation where people are dumbed down, and that enables liberals to look out over the American countryside and see a bunch of idiots and a bunch of people who can't help themselves, a bunch of incompetents who need assistance and guidance through every step of their lives. Hence, liberals say, we know better than they about what is best for them. That was not Reagan. Reagan says, you know better than anybody else what's best for you, and you'll do better for yourself if people just get out of your way. We want to pay tribute to him tonight and give illustrations of the things that I have just said. And as we go through this, pay special attention to how optimistic, how upbeat, and how congenial President Reagan was and is. Despite these assaults, despite the unending attacks, Bill Clinton thinks he has it tough. People have forgotten what Ronald Reagan went through in the 1980s and continues to go through today. And yet he remains unchanged and undaunted. He remains optimistic, remained optimistic and upbeat. It didn't change him. And believe me, folks, that is quite a testament. Let's take a look at some of Ronald Reagan's previous birthdays in this short little montage.
I used to work for a fellow named Jack Warner. His favorite trick at any public appearance that he had to make was to start with a speech and then say, who the hell is that?
Yesterday is my birthday. 75 years ago, I was born in Tampico, Illinois, a little flat above the bank building. We didn't have any other contact with the bank than that. Look what's there.
It's from Pip O'Neill. Something's coming out of it.
It's got football bladders in it, blown up.
Mrs. Reagan, any resolutions you want him to make on his birthday? Anything you want him to do differently?
I think he's doing just fine.
Well, maybe this would be a good time for you to tell him whether you think he should run again.
Oh, no.
You're not getting too old to run again, are you, sir?
What?
You're not getting too old to run again, are you, sir?
How would you like a piece of cake, Sam?
A very loved individual. I tell you, I've never met President Reagan. I've wanted to very badly a number of times, and in fact have had several appointments set up, and for one reason or another they didn't occur. But nevertheless, around Christmas time, December 11th of 1992, I was presented a Christmas gift by the executive producer of this program, Roger Ailes, who had been out in California, who had seen President Reagan. He brought it by my radio studio on, actually I think it came in after December 11th. December 11th is the date on the letter, and I think I got it a little bit closer to Christmas. But it is, to this day, one of the most meaningful gifts that I have ever received. It was a total surprise. And I don't have it here because it's got a frame and glass, and if I held it up, you'd just see a reflection. So we shot it on videotape earlier. And that is it. The picture on the right is a seldom given out picture. It's a picture that they saved and makes it even more special to me for special occasions. And it has that smirky smile that says, hey, I know something you don't know, and I'll tell you anyway in just a second. Toasting people with an empty glass of wine there. And the letter on the left says, thanks, Rush, for all you're doing to promote Republican and conservative principles. Now that I've retired from active politics, I don't mind that you've become the #1 voice for conservatism in our country. I know the liberals call you the most dangerous man in America, but don't worry about it. They used to say the same thing about me. Keep up the good work. America needs to hear the way things ought to be. Sincerely, Ron. And that was... There was another time, somewhat, a couple of years later, that the president was undergoing vicious attacks. And we did a mini tribute on this program that he happened to see. And one of the things I touched on in that previous show was how I'm sick and tired of the revisionists rewriting history, saying things about the Reagan years that weren't true, and about him that weren't true, and about his economic policy. None of the things were true. He wrote me back a thank you note for doing the show. He said, don't worry about the revisionists. They've never bothered me. I trust God and history to judge us fairly. Now that is optimism. And here's a guy who's, if anybody ought to be cynical and skeptical about it, it would be Ronald Reagan. He says, hey, don't worry about it. History will treat me just fine. He was very, very kind. I want to show you a little montage we put together that illustrates the good humor and the optimism so often referenced with President Reagan. Here's that.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience. Last week, Amy Carter was in the news. I'd always thought that if she rebelled, it means she'd become a young Republican. I know it's getting late, dear, but it's not often that we have so many people who've written about us and broadcast about us all together in one room like this, and I thought you might like to say a few nice words to them.